Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. My name is Steve Deace. His name is Todd Erzin. His name is Aaron McIntyre. Maybe throughout the course of our time together, we may or may not learn your name. We shall see. And we have, of course, typical Wednesday fare lined up for you. We will get to buy, sell, or hold beginning at the bottom of the hour. I trust, Aaron, that you have some good buy, sell, or hold submissions for the audience here.
I believe so.
From the audience, I should say.
I believe so.
All right. The weekly prophet of woe and lamentation joined us, Daniel Horowitz. Him and I had an interesting conversation yesterday off the air. I wonder if maybe we'll get into it some on the air, because it's hard to tell which polls to look at these days. You know, I keep records on people's accuracy, and you know, the public polling industry did not do good in the 2016 and 2020 presidential elections. However, the public polling industry was excellent in 2022 and in the midterms. And frankly, it was people like me and maybe others who were a little bit more friendly or flat out ambassadors or representatives of the right. They did who were right in 2016 and 2020, they did very poorly in 2022. So maybe we have to kind of take this cycle by cycle, right? You know? I do know if you're putting out a poll, I think it was Harvard did this last week. Harvard put out a poll and it had Joe Biden getting 50% of the black vote. I do know if you do that in any cycle, all right, I wouldn't wipe my sphincter hole with your poll because I need more than just half ply paper. I need a little bit more torque and texture there, and clearly that thing is... You know, like that's like the Scott's toilet paper of polling. You know, like the half ply stuff that the really cheap gas stations have. And when you're done, you've got to like roll it up into like 20 pieces to get one solid wipe. You know what I'm talking about, Todd? Right? You know
really frustrating.
It is really frustrating.
Brought to you by 4 Sharts and 7 puddings ago.
Yes, it is. Yes, I mean basically that's where they just went out and got some North Korean tree bark and just like shaved it and called it toilet paper is what that Scott's stuff is. You know, you always know if you walk into a rest area or a bathroom on the road, man, taking a roadie, and you see the Scotch, you know.
We're out there.
Yeah, we're going through a half a roll minimum. All right, just to walk out of any form of crickets hanging. All right, and that's kind of the version of poll that has Joe Biden getting 50% of the black vote. That's not a poll. Either that's a psyop. That poll is either a psyop, or it's just, you're terrible at this, and the result's the same regardless of the premise. So I was riveted to hear Daniel tell me yesterday, I went through the internals of this CNN poll, and they look pretty solid. I'm like, what? Tell me more. And one of the things inside that CNN poll, by the way, among independents, largest voting bloc in the country, Trump and Biden have a combined minus 72 net favorable. Minus 72. Remember, James Caan almost got fired for a minus 8. James Caan nearly got fired for a minus 8. If you remember that. I mean, minus 8 is bad.
I got the reference.
Got the reference?
Yeah. Okay.
It's not quite Christmas in July. Maybe it's a little early yet for people, right? But a minus 72?
A little early.
How many days till Christmas, Steve?
188.
Yep, I knew it.
188 days until Christmas, actually. I do know that. Yeah. I've got a countdown in my family room. I update it constantly. So, but anyway, we'll get into that with Daniel coming up a little bit later on. And no more meanderings via my dulcet tones, pontifications on the merits or lack thereof of public restroom toilet paper. All right, I think we've put that topic to bed. We can flush it even. Hey, what? Hey, is this on? No. Okay, never mind. Let's get to Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away brought to you by the word centuple. Centuple is like double, triple, quadruple, and so forth, except centuple means 100 times. And centupling down is exactly what Donald Trump is doing on COVID and the jabs. More from his interview with Fox News' Bret Baier was released last night, and Trump says he's totes cool with the way he handled COVID.
So it is a big part of that spending, COVID. Do you have regrets about how you handled that? Because some of your opponents...
He also continued to brag about Operation Warp Speed.
Did the COVID vaccine work?
It's such an interesting question, because not only that, I also did the Regenerons of the world, we did a tremendous job on that. But we had a vaccine. Now you have different COVIDs. You had COVID-19, and then you have different COVIDs. But we had original was COVID-19, which was the roughest one. So I have a Democrat friend who's very smart. Hopefully he votes for me, but he's very smart. He said, I don't understand one thing about you. I watch your rallies. They're incredible. You talk about beating ISIS. You talk about taxes. You talk about regulation. You talk about everything. But you never said that. I've never heard you talk about how the incredible job you did with the vaccines, because, as you know, I got them done in 9 months, and it was supposed to take anywhere from 5 to 12 years. I broke their ass, okay? And you know who doesn't like me too much? The FDA. Because they were very bureaucratic, and I got it done. And he said, you may have saved in the world, throughout the world, 100 million people, and you never talk about it. I said, I really don't want to talk about it, because as a Republican, it's not a great thing to talk about, because for some reason, it's just not.
For some reason?
Yeah, for some reason.
Mr. I Alone Can Solve also says he was absolutely castrated when it came to Anthony Fauci.
You didn't fire him. You listened to him. You kept him on.
He's a civil service for it. You're not actually allowed to fire him, but I wouldn't let that usually get in my way. It's one of those things.
Most powerful man on the face of the planet couldn't kick somebody out of his own task force. It's just one of those things. Trump was also asked about his First Step Act and how it conflicts with his promise to give the death penalty to drug dealers.
A woman who you know very well was in jail. She had 24 more years to serve. She served for 22 years. She had
Alice Johnson.
Alice.
She was in the Super Bowl.
High quality. Yeah. I said, how many years? And she was on a telephone call, and they were involved in selling marijuana, mostly marijuana. And she got like 50 years in jail.
But she'd be killed under your plan.
Huh?
As a drug dealer.
No. Under that?
Learning Chinese today. Today's phrase is,
it's one of those things.
这是其中之一。
Moving on, the Pentagon jiggled their couch cushions, and you won't believe what they found.
We have confirmed that for FY23, the final calculation is $3.6 billion. And for FY22, it is $2.6 billion, for a combined total of $6.2 billion. These valuation errors in no way limit or restricted the size of any of our PDAs or impacted the provision of support to Ukraine. And while the DoD retains the authority to utilize the recaptured PDA, this has no bearing on appropriated USAI or Ukraine PDA replenishment funding approved by Congress.
$6 billion in accounting errors goes straight to Ukraine. Learning Russian today. Today's phrase is,
it's one of those things.
Это одна из тех вещей.
Former Vice President Mike Pence had this to say about meatball surgery and chemical castration in the name of gender.
In my home state of Indiana and around the country, to prohibit gender transition, chemical or surgical treatment for children under the age of 18. I'm libertarian enough to say if you're an adult, live while you live. I may not agree with decisions you make, but we'll love you and love our neighbor as ourselves, as my faith requires, right? But live and let live.
Love your neighbor as you love yourself now means live and let live. Learning German today. Today's phrase is,
it's one of those things.
Es ist eines dieser Dinge.
And finally, a palate cleanser. Here's Congressman Chip Roy in front of the House Rules Committee.
The people in this Congress are ignoring the people of Texas. And by the way, the migrants getting abused. That's the truth. Talking about people who are admitted into this country. We're talking about the legal definition of admission, not the one app where you're processing people through a port of entry and just dumping them into the United States without having any idea when they return for a hearing on whether their asylum claim was legitimate in the first place, which it usually is not. That's the truth. Now, you can shake your head all you want. We're the ones holding the goddamn bag in Texas. It's true. Talk to the dead people in Texas. Yeah, good, walk out. You don't like the rants? We don't like what's happening to Texas because of you and the president down the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. That's the truth.
Mr. Chair, the gentlelady from Minnesota made an issue about not getting personal. I would urge the chair to.
All right, I'll retract to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle.
And by the way, it's a small committee room. We don't have to scream.
Look, the fact of the matter is I have people dying in my state as a direct consequence of what this federal government fails to do. Kids in my district dying from fentanyl pouring into the community. Schools overrun, hospitals overrun, people trying to figure out how to deal with what is happening because the federal government refuses to do its basic duty.
And that's what happened while we were away.
I think I'm going to go out of order with the live reads if you guys are okay. Because I think, man, after watching all of that, you might need to calm down a little bit and have a nice glass of wine from our friends over at Bonner Private Wines. You've heard me talking about these amazing extreme altitude wines from Bonner Private Wines and their wine partnership before. These are from vineyards deep in the Andes Mountains. Families that are doing this now for going on a second century. Phenomenal red wines. And they go great this time of year, grilling season with red meat. I mean, they go great with anything, any time of year. And if you want to try them right now or try them again, or in Todd's case, again and again and again, you can visit BonnerPrivateWines.com/Steve. You'll not only get the wine for over 50% off, but you'll get free shipping as well. That's a big deal when we're talking about imported wine. So the wine for over 50% off and free shipping, plus a bonus bottle of small batch limited production wine from their exclusive wine cellar. So that's 4 bottles for the price of 3 at half off with free shipping. You cannot beat it. BonnerPrivateWines.com/Steve is where you want to go. That's BonnerPrivateWines.com/Steve. We have talked a lot, and I think deservedly so, that what we are mired in right now is a culture, is more of a spiritual war than even just your regular run-of-the-mill culture war, right?
Yes.
And we have largely focused on the signs of that coming from the enemy camp. That we have transcended even deep political, deep-seated cultural, fundamental philosophical issues into just true darkness, right? Mm-hmm. And we have done that looking at the things they are now defending, the things they now stand for, and it's just clear that these are things that go against human nature, even sinful human nature. They go against, remember, sin is 2 things. Number 1, first and foremost, it is a rebellion and a rejection of God's law. So disobedience. But number 2, it's the motive for why we largely sin. The motive for why we largely sin is that we think we should determine the boundaries for the basic instincts and desires and behaviors and impulses and tastes that God has put within us, that we should break free of the guidelines that he has set around those things and exploit them as we see fit. So sin is largely an exploitation, human sin of its own. Human sin on its own is largely an exploitation of the image in which we were made, or our attempts to exploit those things within other people for our own benefit. What we're dealing with here is demonic. We are now not looking to exploit our humanity. We are looking to go against it, to work against it, to end it. It's nihilistic. It's not sensual. It's nihilistic. I think, though, we've made that point very, very clear. And we'll keep making that point because, Lord knows, unfortunately, in the era in which we live, the evidence will continue to mount to that end. And so why will we keep making that point? Because if we're right, then it requires maybe a different strategy or a line of counterattack than what would be used if you were just fighting an enemy that was largely of a political construct, right?
Yeah.
Think of if you tried to fight World War I, the Kaiser is dropping dropping mustard gas. He's crop dusting the trenches with mustard gas from, early primitive 20th century air machinery. And you're out there decked up like a member of the Roman Legion. You're screwed. Doesn't matter like what level of commitment you have. It doesn't really matter. I mean, right? You're fighting yesterday's war. Mm-hmm. You're fighting a war from a period of time that is not relevant to the time and the kind of warfare that is being fought now. Is that a good analogy of what I'm trying to say? I would like to, in response to what is in Aaron's montage this morning, and in the hope of being of doing this apostolically, apostles and not assassins, I would like us to take a look at our own weapons of war spiritually in response to the enemy we're up against. I want us to start with Mike Pence. And for those of you, and it's not a very large number, but I hear from a few of you every now and then, I am too harsh where he is concerned. The truth of the matter is, in that clip that Aaron showed, Mike Pence proved again that he is the personification of the males. Notice I didn't say men. Of the males who have haunted and I'm using the word haunted on purpose, who have haunted our pulpits and public offices, bearing our jersey for a generation. Mike Pence is a bigger threat to our future than anything the demonic horde can throw at us. Why? Because it is the Mike Pence type in the pulpit and in our public offices who are such moral cowards in response that they will not sound the shofar. They will instead attempt to stop you from doing so because it exposes more of their own shameful cowardice. They are aiders, they are abettors, and I believe in Dante's Inferno, aren't the traitors?
Yes.
The lowest ring of hell, or the one closest to Satan, I believe.
Yes.
Okay? That's what they are. They are moral cowards. In fact, moral cowards in the Bible. Isn't there a reference where Paul says that is the worst? Let me see here. Oh, Jesus says it, actually. In the book of Revelation, Jesus says, listing a list of people who will find themselves in the lake of fire. Forgive me, I'm doing this by memory, and it's been a while since I've studied this, so I had to look it up in real time. Christ speaking in Revelation 21, verse 8. But people who are cowardly, unfaithful, detestable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars will find themselves in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur. This is the second or permanent death. The permanent death. Notice here, sorcerers, idolaters, those would be demonic activities, right? Mm-hmm. But what was first in the list that Jesus articulates here? The Lord speaks first. Cowardly is before even idolaters and sorcerers.
Be not afraid. Be not afraid. Be not afraid.
That's right. How many times is that said in the Bible? Fear not or be not afraid. Some reference to it, something like 365 times, something like that. It's maybe the most oft repeated phrase in the entire scriptures, Genesis to Revelation. But people who are cowardly, that's maybe where Dante perhaps got the inspiration for the rings of hell and ordering them thusly. It's from that scripture, maybe. But people who are cowardly, people who are cowardly, people who are cowardly. First, those are the words of the Lord himself. The first people thrown into the lake of fire, the cowardly. I am convinced that we're going to need spiritual weaponry in order to win a spiritual battle. And so let me as we move now to another person who figured prominently in Aaron's montage, does the overall narrative of the scriptures point to God granting favor to those who admit their mistakes and have humility, or those who do not? What would you say the answer to that question is, Todd?
Those who have humility.
God gives grace to the humble.
Correct.
Yeah. What would you say, Aaron? Would you agree with that? That
yes.
The overall, is there anyone in the audience that would disagree with that?
This is such a truth that in my branch of the Christian tree, 2 times during every Mass, we actually physically get on our knees because it's that important, the point you're making.
I was convinced, because of his well-documented character issues and lack of public record, that if Donald Trump were elected president, essentially what the year 2020 was like is what his entire presidency would be like. And that's why I opposed him vehemently all the way to the very end. But then the people had their say. And I certainly don't want us to suffer any more than we already had. So I came in here the next morning. I beat my sword into a plowshare. I laid my armaments down. And I said, never Trump for me died today. And now we have to hope that this works.
One of the top 5 career decisions you've ever made.
It really wasn't a career decision. I know it probably worked out that way, but it was really
in
just
your career.
It was just spiritual. I get what you're saying. It was really just a spiritual conviction.
Yeah.
I need now I need now to hope that I was wrong. And for 3 years I was wrong. Joyously wrong. Sure, his persona grates on me. I don't really ultimately care about that. I don't, we're not hanging out. I don't need to like him. I don't need a buddy. Just do the damn job, okay? I mean, I remember covering the Iowa State football team in years when they were really good professionally. I'd be in that locker room. There were guys that friggin' hated each other's guts, man. Okay? After the game, they're like hugging and stuff after they would beat Iowa. The rest of the time wouldn't friggin' speak to each other, okay? Just do the job. That's all I care about. We're not buddies. We're not hanging out. The great prophet, Nick Nolte, we ain't partners. We ain't brothers. We ain't friends. Just do the job. And for 3 years, he did the job pretty well. Which is why, in spite of all the mistakes he had made in 2020, I enthusiastically, without reservation, voted for him for president again, voted for him for president for the first time. And I sat there on election night on one of the few networks in the country doing live coverage of the outcome, BlazeTV, and I was one of the first people to point out the discrepancies in what was going on with the election. Antrim County, Michigan was my first warning bell. Then what happened in Arizona was my second warning bell. The next morning, we get up and we see at 3 a.m. they dropped off all these ballot harvested, bags of ballots in the middle of the night that somehow are all seemingly perfectly uniform. And I went on Glenn's show and pointed out they're stealing the election, and this is the kind of stuff that will cause civil wars. The entire Blaze channel got demonetized by Facebook because of what I said. I have worked tirelessly with every relationship I have for the last 2 years to try to reach President Trump. And you guys have been open and privy to that. I've shared as much of it with you as I can to try to reach the president with the realities of what went on because of COVID and those policies. So let me go back and ask the question again. In the scriptures, does the narrative seem to say that God favors those who admit their mistakes, as I just did? I admitted my mistake. I was wrong about him up front. And so when I was wrong about him, did I dig in my heels? Did I desire to be proven correct? Did I want everything that I endured and put up with to be never Trump in 2016 to be justified? So I held on to something out of ego and spite that in my heart I kind of knew was wrong, but I just didn't want to let it go. Is that what I did? No, I let it go. I think there's hundreds of thousands of people are dead because of lockdowns and the poisonous poke. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead. therapy clinics like my wife's, where she is practicing her craft as a therapist as we speak today, are overrun with young people who haven't recovered from being locked down, sequestered from society, and their levels of depression. How many of you, your loved ones, died alone? And you never made peace with them. Your kid never got a graduation. You never got a funeral. How many of you, your dad, who was in excellent shape, was out jogging 48 hours after he got the shot, and then he just died suddenly? I think of our friend Charles that we all got to know very well, and we got to know him because he was looking for answers after one of his best friends who had struggled with substance abuse, and his church got shut down, and a Celebrate Recovery program, or AA, I think it was, one of the two, he couldn't get access to, and he ended up taking his own life. The president's policies alleviated a lot of suffering in the world, and he should get credit for that. The Abrahamic Accords relieved suffering in the world. Donald Trump deserves credit for that. The overturning of Roe versus Wade ended significant suffering in this world. That he should get credit for that. We had the largest middle class income growth that we have seen in this country since the dot-com boom. So basically this century so far. That alleviates suffering. Are families that are financially well off more likely to get divorced than the families that aren't? No, it's the other way around. Mm-hmm. He should get credit for that. And if I'm being humble, I have to constantly remind myself, because his personality grates on me and because I'm so angry about what went on during COVID, I have to keep reminding myself to do that, okay? So pray for me where that is concerned. But folks, do you think it is in God's nature to grant favor to someone whose acts caused great suffering and they're not repentant for it? Because everything he did in 2020, as it relates to COVID, caused great suffering too. And that suffering is ongoing as well. We still haven't ended the escalation of the excess deaths. It still goes on. Just nobody seems to care. Because I don't. And if he's going to be the champion here again, he can't beat these people politically. He's out. He's too far gone with independence. It's almost at this point. Ironically, one of the things that might actually help him repackage himself with independence is to show the very kind of repentance and remorse and humility I'm advocating for. That might cause us to say, you know what? Maybe the guy has changed. Maybe he is different. Because this current path, that's not happening, and that's the largest voting bloc in the country. It's clear he can't beat them legally. They own all the levers of power. They just, Hunter Biden, here's your gun charge, plead guilty, and go out and buy a gun today if you want. By the way, we're going to take your guns away if you guys don't mind. Not going to beat him legally, not going to beat him politically. So we're kind of out of fronts here of how to beat these people if he's going to be our champion, right? Yeah. We got one front left. Now, the good news is it just so happens to be the most powerful one of them all, spiritually. But I just don't believe God will grant favor to someone who has caused great suffering and will not show any remorse or humility for it. I don't. Now, on the other hand, I believe in a God that shows that it will instantly at times show favor to people who have caused suffering and are earnestly repentant for it, to the point that so much favor that at times, this is what the prodigal son is kind of about, at times those of us who didn't cause that suffering are like, wait a minute, shouldn't he feel bad for a little bit longer here? That's not right? Mm-hmm. That's how the kingdom of God tilts toward mercy triumphs over judgment. But it doesn't say mercy cancels judgment, does it? No. And maybe you'll get that analysis nowhere else in America today, and maybe that's because I'm just a crackpot and completely wrong. I don't know. But we're up against hell. And I think we're only going to win a spiritual battle spiritually. And I have doubts we can win a spiritual battle with a champion who is unrepentant of the suffering he caused. That's my 2 cents this morning. So we brought on a new partner on the show called Naturally Clean, Bob Vila. He's still around. Did you know that?
Well, on this mortal coil, I think I knew that.
Yeah. He gave Naturally It's Clean a big endorsement. Said it was the most eco-friendly carpet stain remover on the market today. But how about I just give it my own endorsement? Because, it's like what the corporations say during Pride Month. I'm a bit of a homosexual myself, right? Okay. All right. I'm a bit of a clean freak myself, except I really am. That everybody that knows me will attest to that is one of my idiosyncrasies. All right. I am a bit of a clean freak. Forgive me. I was raised by Vicky. I was eager to try these products. They are spectacular. Our dog Cap recently had an accident in the living room. And of course, it had to happen right after I got the carpets professionally cleaned, because why not? It's like he was just waiting. Hadn't had one in months. It's like, hey, the old man got, like, let's test this son of a gun. I got out the Naturally Clean pet stain remover. It was incredible. I mean, I'm serious. It's dramatically better than anything we have bought on the market commercially. That also is loaded with chemicals. I'm using it for the laundry now. I sprayed out the garage floor with the floor cleaner. I mean, this stuff is phenomenal. All of it manufactured here in the USA. Met the owners a couple weeks back. They're patriots as well. So you're supporting a company that supports your values on top of everything else. They do free 2-day shipping. Free 2-day shipping. Get your Steve's Essential Starter Kit. So a variety of the products that they offer. When you go to naturallyitsclean.com/Steve, naturallyitsclean.com/Steve. Again, naturallyitsclean.com/Steve. Really good stuff. All right, let's get to buy, sell, or hold. Aaron, with some help from you, his friends in the audience, has prepared for you and I, Todd, a series of tweets that will put us to the test. Are we going to buy it? Are we going to sell it? Indeed. If we ever use the hold, however, we are guilty of punking out in defiance of the dude code. And therefore, your penalty will be you have to listen to Mike Pence pontificate on the moral issues of the day. 24 hours nonstop. No sleep, no food, eyelids taped open.
I thought this was going to be, you're going to have to help Lindsey Graham get to the bottom of the Fox News glory holes.
Yikes. That's
what it should have been.
Yikes.
As bad as the oppressive nature of your Lindsey Graham
I think this is the cruelest punishment yet.
I'm more likely than ever before to avoid a hold.
Indeed. This is the cruelest punishment that we have ever offered yet.
Who's more masculine, Lindsey Graham or Mike Pence?
Yes.
Or no.
No.
That's an even better answer. Yes. All right, Aaron, let's go.
We begin with Matthias Nilsson. With the likelihood of Alito and Thomas, both in their mid-70s, retiring during the next presidential term, it makes the 2024 election the most crucial we've ever had.
So you guys know how much I loathe this talking point. All right.
Yes,
I have spent how much of my career railing against this talking point? Meaning the most important election of our lifetime talking point. Okay. My computer actually has the precise time. It is 12:40 a.m. Eastern Time on June 21st, 2023. The first day of summer, correct?
Yeah.
So maybe it's the summer solstice. Okay. But mark the tape. For the first time ever, I will agree that this is the most important election of our lifetimes.
But for this reason?
And this is one of the reasons. Yeah. I will buy. It's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons. We're not just talking about any two Supreme Court justices here. We're talking about by far the two best. And the two best other than Scalia and Rehnquist of the last 50 years, probably. So it's not just, I mean, it's hard to get Amy Coney Barrett to do the right thing now. What happens if there's no Scalia, that's who she clerked for. If there's no Thomas or Alito on the bench, but more Kavanaughs or worse, more Kagans and Sotomayors, what's the ecosystem of that court like? But I think that's just one factor. The overwhelming factor is we are running, and let me rephrase that. The overwhelming factor for why I am saying this for the first time is we are running out of time to peaceably acquire and wield the power necessary to restore some semblance of sanity to this country. Now, I don't know. As much as I love my man Jesse Kelly we had yesterday, I don't think we have 60, 65 years. He thought it would take probably that long for the people to rise up against this with all the comfort we have. I don't think we have that long at all. Like, I'm not sure we have 60, 65 years to like exist as a country, let alone in any form of righteous state. The board is set. The pieces are moving. We have come to it at last. I mean, if the guidance counselors are telling your kids to get castrated and chest bound, the only thing left to do after that would be to tell them to euthanize themselves. And if you think it's possible that we won't have school counselors advocating this in the next 3 to 5 years, if I would have said in 2016, in the next 5 years, we'll have school counselors advocating that kids get castrated, you would have told me I was nuts, right?
Yeah, something like that.
And that's exactly what ended up happening. We are on a fast descent, swift descent. And I do think for the first time it is possible that this is true. Because I don't foresee there's any more brinks to come to. I think we're at the brink. We are debating, denying fundamental things previous generations. I mean, if you went back and read Ayn Rand and didn't know her history, you would think, wow, she had quite a grasp on things, but she really knew the Bible. No. She thought we Bible moths were morons, idiots, and she was a virulent, vicious, aggressive atheist, in fact. Aggressive. It's just she came from a period of time where everyone understood, regardless of how they voted, that some things just had to be objectively true. And so she created even her own philosophy called objectivism in order to quantify those things. We don't believe things have to be objectively true anymore. And when that is the case, we're not slouching towards Gomorrah, Judge Bork, man. We're not even sprinting now. I mean, it's we're descending. If you hear what I'm picking up when I'm laying down here. And I mean, with everything going on, if you put the net zero agenda together, electric cars, everything else, if I told you that by 2028, an American existence was put into place, do you even see gas-powered vehicles advertised on television anymore? Rarely. It's electric. I mean, they're pounding this message. By 2028, if I told you that in America, you weren't allowed to drive anything other than an electric vehicle, that some central hub on a federal or state level, like this is the new driver's license. But the new driver's license is what you post on social media last night and is your car. That this level of control was implemented. I mean, I go back to something that's been haunting me. I had dinner in Boise a couple weeks ago with a great man, Peter McCullough. You guys all know him from our show. It's something he said that just blew my mind. He said several things that blew my mind, but one of them was this. He said, traveling the country and traveling the world, what has truly astonished me is how many people want a king.
Yes, that's why I'm selling on this. That's right. I'm selling. You are absolutely right. Because it doesn't matter if we get the clones of Alito. If the average American male continues to be the average American male, it just doesn't matter. That's why I'm selling what you just said.
Okay.
Now for some whiplash. Top 10 Spirit of the Age grunge hits of the 90s.
Gosh, no.
This is from Jim Stocker, by the way.
So someone else is trying this. Now, is it Sean something that usually does these?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Intersex Love Song.
Good.
Yeah, that'll work.
Black Hole Sun.
Oh, no.
That's spelled
No,
with
they spelled it S-O-N. No.
Gender unknown.
No.
That's super unknown.
Yeah.
Spoon-A-Man.
So we went. We went Soundgarden 3 songs in a row. Did you notice that? He went Soundgarden 3 songs in a row. Nice. Okay.
Spoon-A-Man. Spoonin'.
Oh, that's next one.
Vaseline.
No changes.
No changes necessary. Get out. Stop.
Booster.
It's a rooster. So far we've done 2 Stone Temple Pilots, 3 Soundgardens, and we just did an Alice in Chains. Okay.
Booster. In Groom.
Oh,
instead of In Bloom.
Dude, for Nirvana. Could that be sadly the best one yet? In Groom.
He gets it.
Man with a Box.
Oh God! Oh no, that's the best one. Another Alice in Chains reference there. That's the best one. Man with a Box.
Stevens Flow.
So Pearl Jam has entered the chat.
And Sells Like a Teen Sex Change.
Nirvana again, but Man with a Box is the best one. Todd, your thoughts? Buying the entire list, tragically so. Would you like to revisit whether or not the next election's the most important of our... See, you thought that was an awkward segue, Aaron. No. You just quantified the last question. The fact that these are all... They're not even parodies. This is going on right now. The clock... Can you hear it? The clock is ticking, man. Ticking. That's why I'm concerned about Donald Trump's ranking with independents on June 21st. Guys,
here's a thought that I had this morning. We have a lot of submissions, and we'll get to more later. And I like these submissions, so this is not a knock on those. But by the year 2030, by the year 2032, thus, and thus will happen. Instead of asking, will this happen by the year 2030, is the question we should be asking, did we make it to 2023?
You mean, is this stuff already happening now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. This thing is...
I mean,
it's accelerating.
90s grunge was supposed to be like, we just kind of... We don't care.
Yeah.
We've given up. It's an Algonquin round table
yes,
compared
it is.
to today.
Yeah. I mean, Black Hole Sun came on. It's one of my all-time favorite songs. Came on my Peloton ride I was on yesterday. And I hadn't heard it in a few months. And I'm listening to the lyrics all over again. And I'm like, dude. I mean, this was burnout music when we were growing up. This actually feels more like, I have a dream.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like now. Okay. All right, before we move on, remember our friends over at Eden Pure can help you purify the air in your home with clean, fresh-smelling air that eliminates odors, kills mold, mildew, even bacteria and viruses that are causing the unhealthy and unfresh air in your home. With the Eden Pure Thunderstorm Air Purifier and their Oxy technology, it's filterless, and it actually cleans the air. It doesn't freshen the air. It cleans the air, which is how it freshens it. All right, and I've gotten so many rave reviews for this product from the audience. If you want to try it today, get the 3-pack for whole home protection, 3 units for under $200. Their competitors are usually about $600 for 3 units in the same space. They're probably not as good if we're being honest. All right, so put one in your basement, bedroom, family room, kitchen, or anywhere you need clean, fresh air. 3 units for under $200 and free shipping. And did I mention you'll never pay for filters or have to replace them ever? EdenPureDeals.com is where you want to go. EdenPureDeals.com. Use the discount code Steve for the discount. Discount code Steve at EdenPureDeals.com.
Next up, we go to When Howitzers Fly. The SBC Disfellowship of Saddleback Church is a major step in the overall church confrontation of the spirit of the age, in line with the begging of a general cultural rejection of said spirit.
I'm hoping this is the case, so I will buy. I mean, you could say, how did they let this go on with Saddleback for as long as they did? But give the Southern Baptist Convention credit for drawing lines when no one's drawing like any right now. None. Okay? So I give them credit. And it's not easy. Rick Warren is the biggest celebrity the Southern Baptist Convention has produced since Billy Graham. Okay. I mean, he wrote one of the greatest best-selling nonfiction books in the history of the Christian church, The Purpose-Driven Life, which ironically, the very first line is, "It's not about you." And then Rick Warren spent his twilight years in retirement making it all about him, trying to drive the SBC into heresy over gender and roles and authority and roles within the church. So I give them credit for drawing this line at all. So I will buy.
I do too. I will simply sell because it came to my attention yesterday that Texas Christian University, TCU, has a major drag and trans presence there. So don't mess with Texas.
Steve,
Wow.
do you remember when you were on...
Are they associated with the SBC? I don't know.
No, I just mean to say that more broadly speaking.
Oh, you mean
this is
beyond the SBC ecosystem?
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. All right.
Maybe a black pill moment for us should have been, I remember this. You were still on WHO, and a student at TCU called your show one time to inform you that I think it was on the issue of rainbow something or another was being prominently featured at TCU, and this would have been back in 2007, 2008, somewhere in those lines. Maybe that should have been one of our black pill moments. I don't know if you remember that, caller, but I sure do.
Mm-hmm. Now that you mentioned it, I do remember it. Yeah.
You do remember that?
Yeah, and I think they also wanted to rebrand as TCU and not be called Texas Christian anymore. Was around that time too.
Yeah. So when we come back, because we don't have enough time for this right now, I have no idea. I've never watched a single episode of Star Trek. We have a list from Bruce Logan, top 11 all-time Star Trek series episodes. I have no frame of reference, Steve, but you do.
I do. Yeah.
And so you will be a harsh judge when
until
we
it
come
became
back.
Gay Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I haven't watched any of the CBS app Star Trek at all until season 3 of Picard. Season 3 of Picard is spectacular. It's phenomenal. So thank you to my buddy Tim Young for the recommendation. It's not woke at all, only a little gay, okay? And it's a veiled reference to gayness. The rest of it is just really kick-ass, great stuff. And I was blown away. Amy and I were like blown away by the production value. We're like, this is on an app? I mean, there is better CGI in Star Trek Season 3 Picard than in several of the recent MCU movies. I mean, the cinematography and stuff was spectacular. So, but prior to Season 3 of Picard, it's all been Gay Trek, so I haven't watched like any of it. So, are any of those episodes on here or the old school stuff?
I'm not sure. We'll see.
All right, we'll discuss it when we come back. Daniel Horowitz will join us as well. Stay tuned. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Hers and Aaron McIntyre and all of you. And all of you, though I hope not all at once, can let us know what you think about what we think. First and foremost, by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also find me at Real Steve Deace, at Real Steve Deace on Truth Social. We would like to find your 5-star review on our podcast pages. So if you've yet to leave one of those, please, if you like the show, do that. And thank you to each and every one of you who have. You can hit subscribe or follow if you're on iTunes as well. All those things help the show, which is why we are so thankful for each and every one. Collective wants to be helpful to you because they know a lot of you are, you've got a side hustle, maybe a small business, you're an entrepreneur, freelancer, and that's how you feed your family, consultant, software designer, a developer, coach, photographer, etc. But then there's the crushing work that a solo entrepreneur has to deal with. Business formation, paperwork, accounting, bookkeeping, taxes, and more. And you want to be focused on your passion. That's how you're going to make money. That's how you're going to feed your family. Let them focus on the details at Collective, the all-in-one financial solution for freelancers, contractors, and self-employed entrepreneurs, especially if you're making north of $60,000 a year. They want to make sure to help you with taxes, bookkeeping, accounting, even payroll, the perfect marriage of technology plus human tax and accounting experts that are there to guide you. And help you maximize your tax savings. For example, if you've already made some money this year and you don't yet have an S-Corp election right now through, no, actually, that was last week. Uh-oh. So this is why you guys got to respond to when we give you the details.
It's in the rundown today.
Yeah, it's in the rundown today, but it expired on June 13th.
Go to collective.com.
Yeah, but you know what? I think it was good that they put that in there, though. You know why? Because it indicates these are the kinds of details that are hard to remember when you are so focused on the actual product or the service that you're trying to perform. So let them handle those details for you. Collective.com is where you want to go. Again, collective.com. That's collective.com. All right, let's get back to buy, sell, or hold at the bottom of the hour. Daniel Horowitz will join us. Until then, Aaron.
We go now to Bruce Logan. Top 11 all-time Star Trek series episodes. Number 11, The Trouble with Tribbles.
All right, so that absolutely is considered an all-time classic episode of the original series. So, you know, my typical thing when we do these lists is, am I immediately offended that it's on there? No, then I'm okay with it, even if I wouldn't put it on there or it's not ranked where I would have it. So The Trouble with Tribbles is a signature Star Trek episode, so I'll buy.
I'm just letting Steve run with these because other than The Next Generation, I was not a classic Star Trek follower. It'll be out of my purview.
Number 10, The Doomsday Machine.
Put the whole list up there. Let me see. Okay, that's spacey. Yeah, unification. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll buy. But I don't see the one unless I'm missing the title. No, I don't see the one where the Romulans were first introduced. And that's the one where you find out that the Romulans and the Vulcans were actually sister races for the first time. And the guy takes off his headgear and he's got the same pointy ears that Spock has. And it's basically a whole episode where they're in the middle of the Enterprise is in a dogfight in deep space with a Romulan spacecraft. That's one of the great original episodes ever. That's got to be on the list. But okay, I'll buy.
Rapid fire, number 9, Space Seed.
I mean, that's maybe the great. That's up there. That's the episode that introduced Khan. Where is it? Where am I thinking of the Star Trek episode with Joan Collins?
Aaron, it is not going to be rapid fire.
Isn't that City on the Edge of Forever? Is that what I'm thinking of? Yeah, that's got to be on your list, dude. Yeah, City on the Edge of Forever has got to be on your list. And this is the point in time where my wife is listening right now and thinking, if I hadn't had your children, I'd swear you're a virgin.
Well, here's let's get to the crux of the matter, Steve. He has 4 of the top 5 from Star Trek Voyager. Is that possible?
No. Very good series, but I'd handle having a couple on there, but no.
Is Voyager the Bakula one?
The what killer?
Scott Bakula, who's Star Trek?
No, that's Enterprise.
That's Enterprise?
Voyager's the one with Janeway, all right? Okay. Where they get thrown out into, I think it's the Gamma Quadrant, which is an unexplored quadrant. Yeah.
Okay.
Or is it the Delta Quadrant? I can't remember. I think it's Delta, actually. All right, keep going.
Number 8, All Good Things.
That's got to
I love how he looked at me when he was asking about the Delta Quadrant. I don't
know. That maybe should be number 1. That's one of the greatest singular television episodes of all time. That's the final episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. That episode is phenomenal. That should maybe be number 1 on the list.
Number 7, Unification.
You can make a case that should be number 1 on the list. This was the Next Generation episode. You'll remember this, Todd, where Spock was brought back. And Romulus was reunified, like East and West Germany. They kind of did a takeoff of that. All right, that's a phenomenal episode. But you know what? Go back. You know what's not on that list? Okay, there it is. All right, it is on the list. Okay, keep going. All right, never mind.
Number 6, Q Who.
I think the biggest mistake that was ever made with the Next Generation films is they never did a movie with Q. They did after First Contact, which is next to The Wrath of Khan, the best Star Trek movie ever made. Of the original line, because I love the first J.J. Abrams movie is incredible with Chris Pine. That movie's incredible. But that's the one you quote all the time. I dare you to do better.
Yeah.
Okay. But the next 2 Star Trek Next Generation movies after that were very, very lackluster. They never did a movie with Q. Big mistake. That belongs on the list.
Number 5, Unimatrix Zero.
So the next 4 episodes are all Voyager. There's no way that any of those Voyager episodes, I'm going to just sell on all of them. Even if you think they belong on the list, there's no way they are ahead of City on the Edge of Forever from the original series. No way they're ahead of Unification. No way they're ahead of All Good Things. No way. So I'm going to sell on all of that.
Number 4, Endgame.
I'm selling, just based on what I just said.
3, Scorpion. 2, Dark Frontier.
Selling, yes.
And number 1, The Best of Both Worlds.
This is a very deserving number 1. I think it still remains the highest rated episode in the history of Star Trek The Next Generation. And this is where Picard is assimilated into the Borg. I am Locutus of Borg. Resistance is futile. The Best of Both Worlds, part 1 and 2. And First Contact serves as like a sequel to those episodes. So I think that's a deserving number 1. It would certainly be in my top 5, even if I wouldn't have it number 1. Not a bad list. Just the Voyager stuff's all way too high.
All right, moving on to Chipper. GoldenEye 007 Nintendo 64 version is the best video game of all time.
Never played it, so I got to sell. And I never and
I'm a 50-year-old man.
And what was on Nintendo 64 is nothing compared to what we have available today. I mean, Noah and I last night went and got the PS5 remastered version of, because they're coming out, the new Sony Spider-Man game, which is incredible, comes out in October. And so we're like, well, let's go through and play, in anticipation of that. It's been a couple of years since we played it the first time. Let's get the remastered PS5 version of the first Spider-Man game. Wow. I mean, it felt like we were playing a movie. It was incredible. And so, no, N64 couldn't hold that jockstrap.
All right, moving on. Ben Chambers, Matt Rule lasts longer in Lincoln than Luke Fickell at Wisconsin.
I'm selling only because I think you have it right. I don't have an instinct one way or the other. Both are fraught with a certain degree of obvious peril.
But also both bring proven and exemplary college coaching resumes as well. I'm going to sell here, and here's why I'm going to sell. I think it is a far higher likelihood that that once he establishes his own brand of success, Matt Rule would move to another job than Luke Fickell would. Now, I don't know what the percentage is. I just think it's higher. Rule's already moved a few times. He had one breakthrough season at Baylor, went to the NFL right away. Left Temple, which, was, of course, a stepping stone job. Fickell has been fickle about choosing jobs all along. He could have had USC. Could have had several big-time jobs. Didn't want his family to grow up. I think they're a very devout trad Catholic family of like 8 homeschool their kids, I want to say. Didn't want to raise his kids in LA. So even when his old AD went to USC, he didn't go out there with him. I think it was pretty much known that it was going to be probably a Midwestern team with resources, like his alma mater, Ohio State. Wisconsin has resources because they're in the Big Ten. Notre Dame. Probably if Cincinnati had not made the playoff, he would have replaced Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. But when Cincinnati made the playoff, now the season goes well into January, and you're into recruiting, and Notre Dame just could not let that recruiting class blow up, And that's why I think you guys got him this year, a year he didn't make the playoffs, so he was instantly available, right? I think it's more likely that Fickell will not leave after he's had his own success than Rule is, and so that's why I will sell.
Next.
But I think they're both good hires. I do. I think Fickell actually has the bigger challenge, even though he's at the school that has been clearly the more successful in the last couple of decades, but he's introducing a dramatically different culture, scheme, everything into that matrix. He's reinventing the wheel in Madison. Matt Rule's got a blank canvas. He can do whatever the hell he wants. They're just desperate. Anything, just make it work. Win games. I mean, whatever scheme you want to run, what have you. Fickell is taking the legacy of a guy who's still alive, by the way, and completely, rebooting it. He's terraforming it. I think that's the bigger challenge.
Next up, Viral Architect says Mount Rushmore of Will Ferrell movies. Elf, Step Brothers, Talladega Nights, and Anchorman.
I think that's a great list. Here's a further follow-up. Are those the only good Will Ferrell movies? Actually, no. What's the one with Mark Wahlberg where they're cops? That's got to be on the list.
Hard something.
Yeah.
It's
Ferrell.
I just watched
hard.
that.
I mean, it's
Get Hard.
Get Hard. Yeah.
No, they went to prison. That was when they went to prison. The other guys.
Oh yeah.
All right. I think The Other Guys is better than Step Brothers, man. The Other Guys is tremendous. That opening scene, man, where The Rock and Samuel L. Jackson just jump off the roof for no reason to their death is great. Okay, it's great. So Step Brothers is considered the more known, but I love The Other Guys.
Perhaps no other comedic actor is a hit or miss more than Will Ferrell.
One of the worst movies I've ever seen in a theater.
Hilarious. There are some that's like you're trying way too hard.
One of the worst movies I've ever seen in a theater was the Sherlock Holmes thing that came out a couple of years ago. One of the worst movies I have ever seen in a theater. Him and John C. Reilly. It was awful, dreadful. I had to see it through to the end, just out of curiosity more than anything else. Amy's like, "We've got to go." I'm like, "No, I got to know. I've got to know. Is it this bad all the way through?" And oh my, it's How much fentanyl were they smoking when they made that film? Okay, because cocaine would have made it far more creative.
Next up, Jacob Arthur says if Republicans have any hope of winning the presidency in 24, and I think he means regardless of the candidate, they need to make massive financial investments in getting RFK Jr. to run as an independent.
That'll have the wrong, that will have the opposite impact, I think, that you may want.
Who is a candidate that would fit that mold, though? Is there one to accomplish what Jacob is talking about?
As of right now, I would say such a candidate does not exist. I think, you're seeing stories, RFK is caught up to Biden polling. Those stories aren't accurate. When you read the story, it's approval rating. It's not actual like horse race polling. Okay. So, I think it will have the opposite effect. I think RFK Jr. takes away from the Republican nominee, no matter, let's say it's Trump or DeSantis. In Trump's case, if he continues to just absolutely refuse to admit that the policies he helped to put into motion caused great carnage and damage, RFK Jr. could singularly run on that alone as an independent candidate and probably take anywhere from 3 to 10 points away from Trump in a general election. If you're one of those, if they take away Trump, I'm voting for nobody else types, okay, and DeSantis is the nominee, I think you can do the same math if RFK Jr. is on the ballot the other way. I think he's far more damaging to Republicans. I mean, listen, I would vote for RFK Jr. over any Republican running except for Trump and DeSantis, without hesitation. Without hesitation. I mean, I'd vote for RFK Jr. a couple times over my Christian brother, Mike Pence, without hesitation. I think he is the closest thing we have seen to a Ross Perot if he were to run as an independent. What did Ross Perot represent? A dissident wing of voters who traditionally voted Republican on fiscal sanity issues that were big at that time in history that the Republican Party had abandoned and stopped being a voice for. And that's why he predominantly took away from George H.W. Bush over Bill Clinton. What does RFK Jr. represent? People who feel as if the system has left them behind, become irrevocably corrupt. The intelligence community to our agencies and bureaucracies are nothing other than War Inc., nothing other than Tyranny Inc., right? That's who he represents, right? He's taken away from Democrats with that message? Nah, brah. No. He provides a soft landing. If you're a Republican pissed at Trump because King Saul won't admit the poopy decisions he made, you're going to RFK if you're deserting him. If you're pissed that Trump isn't the nominee and DeSanctimonious is, he's got a somewhat Trumpian message too. No, he takes away as an independent from Republicans, the other way around.
Yeah, I'm selling.
Next, Jamie Burwell, one of our most important top 5 lists of all time. Top 5 best summer treats. Number 5, slushy, slurpy, icy. Number 4, popsicle. Number 3, shaved ice. Number 2, s'mores. And number 1, ice cream in any form. Slushy's got to be higher. Popsicle, if they're the ones that my wife gets from, I think, Trader Joe's, those are legit. The ones with the fake artificial flavors, nah. I can take or leave.
Todd?
I'm selling. I'm a 50-year-old man.
I'm going to sell because I don't frankly care about any of the other treats on that list except for the ice cream. I just picked five flavors of ice cream I like and make that my top 5. I mean, I just, when we still had ice cream trucks.
There is one in my community.
Is there? Okay. I mean,
super annoying.
I got, never mind.
Electronic, like Nintendo sounding, loudspeaker playing Silent Night in the middle of June really loudly.
I'm just like, I'm a 50-year-old man. It doesn't apply to me.
Aaron's like, I'm an 85-year-old man.
It applies to nobody. It must die.
Never mind. I have no answer after that.
See, I thought ice cream trucks in Iowa were like illegal or something. That's what confused me. But no, there's one traipsing around Norwalk. What Bandit says Trump would rather be in jail than on a debate stage one-on-one with Ron DeSantis.
I need to believe that Donald Trump wants to be anywhere other than jail. So I'm going to sell, which, by the way, folks, we have to consider what I said yesterday. Donald Trump has a history of putting his self-interest ahead of others that he's in intimate relationships with, whether that's creditors, wives. That's fact, right? Mm-hmm. That's every bit as much of a fact as it is he appointed the justices that overturned Roe. Mm-hmm. Facts, they're facts. And I do think we need to consider the possibility here that he would cut a deal to stay out of prison that would remove him from consideration for the presidency. I don't know what those percentages are, but they ain't zero. I mean, Brett Baer asked him every question possible the other night. You know what question he didn't ask him? Are you prepared at 76, 77, I want to say?
Yeah.
Are you prepared at 76, 77 years old to spend the rest of your natural life in prison over this? I'd just love to know what he said. What was his answer? I want to see his reaction. So I'm going to sell because I just can't possibly believe that's true.
Next up, we go to E.R. King. 90+% of churches will have nothing to say about the anniversary of Roe being overturned this coming Sunday.
Bye.
When we say churches, are we talking everybody? The church collective? Churches
specify.
Collectively in America? Okay, then I'll buy that. Yeah.
Oh, I'd take out all the... Let's just talk conservative, whatever. Even the Orthodox churches. I don't think 90% of them are going to bring it up.
Next, Earth to Mel says...
Man, when is the football season? I mean, goodness, that's depressing.
Earth to Mel. Sean Patrick Flannery reading the audio version of Nefarious would be a huge bestseller.
Did you see his response on Twitter about that notion?
No, did he respond? I did not see it, no.
He said, I'm game. That's it.
Did he?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how much he wants to get compensated for that. That could be a hurdle, but it would be something to have his voice on it for sure. Yeah.
Next, Steve Deace Burner says this. College football will add a separate off-site referee committee who can overturn calls made by refs in the actual game that concluded in instant replay session. The purpose will largely be to eliminate potential crowd pressure bias that on-site refs deal with and experience.
I could see this, but for another reason, gambling. The idea of, are the outcomes clean? Are you doing everything possible to avoid any form of a class action lawsuit? Because of your practices. I mean, this is why we have. The stock market is a form of learned speculation, which is a nice way of saying gambling. And so whether it's a stock market or a commodities market, they all have regulatory agencies, right? that oversee the transactions, that oversee the flow of, even the flow of information within the habitats themselves, to make sure that things are at least have the veneer of being fair and objective. I could see this happening comprehensively with sports across the board, because now you have legalized learned speculation. People are investing, gambling, on the outcomes. And that's what you're doing at the market for soybeans and for sugar and for stocks and bonds and mutual funds. You're investing, see that as gambling, on an outcome. All right. Anytime that you invest in an outcome that is uncertain, that you are uncertain of, and that you directly have no say in the outcome of, that is a form of gambling. And so all these other forms of gambling have third-party regulatory capture. I could absolutely see that come to sports as well, especially now that the leagues are partnering with the gambling. There's the NFL sponsored by DraftKings. Yeah, you absolutely want to avoid that kind of stuff. You bet. I could see it. I'll buy.
I'll buy only because this is clearly debased and utterly unnecessary, so it's what we're going to do. So I'll buy. But there's
since it's debased and unnecessary, we will do so.
There's a direct line of correlation with the condition of things as we spend most of our time talking about this show. And men we're parsing this like it's scripture. Mm-hmm. It's disgusting to me. It is absolutely disgusting to me.
This is one of, maybe your soccer. I just love that you do this. I do. I love how persistent you are in resetting this. Okay. I love it. Big fan. I like it.
I have not listened to sports.
I'll never stop.
I've not listened to sports talk radio probably almost since the start of the new year. It's just tedious and very cringy.
You know what I listen to for sports talk radio, guys? I listen to sports gambling podcasts. Why?
Because they only care about
the games and the outcomes. They don't give a poop in the turd about the drama and the politics surrounding it. That's all they care about. That's the place where I can go to listen, and it's just actually about the games. Okay?
But since we talked about the Borg, it's all the Borg. It has totally co-opted the men of this nation. It's so appalling.
Next, go to the rooftop bandit. The United States of America will survive to 2030 with all 50 states in current constitutional government.
2030? Okay. Yeah, I'll buy.
Then I will sell. I was going to take the opposite answer of you, because I think it is a flip of a coin right now.
Yeah.
Which goes back to why I gave the answer I gave on 2024.
Things will have to get more. See, this is the thing. You'll be right if things get much more uncomfortable fast, which is also what I believe needs to happen to awaken as well. So I'm with you.
All right, Pumpkin Cat 031.
That's a word we haven't heard on this show enough.
Pumpkin Cat.
Pumpkin. Just pumpkin, stop. Pumpkin anything.
Cat.
Can't wait to hear it more here in a couple of months. Going to hear it constantly. Can't wait.
He won't stop either.
No, I won't.
Pumpkin spice is totally co-opted the men of this nation.
Would you believe I still have...
Yes.
I still have a supply of pumpkin spice Kit Kats from last fall in my fridge as a backup for this summer, when I can't wait. I can't wait for late August, man. I got to have it now. And so it's just been sitting there in my personal dish in the fridge from last October, man. My pumpkin spice Kit Kats, just waiting for when I just got to have a fix.
Yep. Of course.
Pumpkin Cat 1031 says, top 5 Mel Brooks movies. Number 5, Young Frankenstein.
Well, that would be like top 3, because I think I've only seen like 3 Mel Brooks movies, and that's one of them, and it's a great movie.
Number 4, History of the World Part 1.
Nah, I didn't like that at all.
The Producers, the Wilder version.
Yeah, I've not seen either.
The Producers, the Broderick version.
Not seen that.
And number 1, Blazing Saddles.
Hey, where are the white women at? Yeah. I have seen that one.
Fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, those would be my top 2, with Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles. Yes.
Ben Richards, he just has this statement. I used to wonder how the 1930s Germans, especially the church, could have been so easily manipulated by Hitler. After living through the last few years, the answer is painfully clear.
I will
buy, sell, or hold.
I will hard buy.
Yes.
Sadly. which again goes back to why I gave the answer I gave on 2024. Yeah, I will buy.
Martin Parks, a mea culpa Trump would be the most effective way to regain lost independent voters and unite support in the GOP, and that's why it will never happen.
I think this is largely true, or at least it could be. Like, I don't know that it's the most effective way, but I certainly don't think it would be ineffective. Does anybody think Donald Trump showing any modicum of humility before the American people would be ineffective? No. Regardless of what the subject matter happens to be. Right? No, I don't.
I'm buying on this.
So I can't say for sure it would be the most effective, but since I can't think of another thing that would be more effective, I will buy. You bet.
Yeah, he just, like I said earlier on with the Sweet Cakes by Melissa, like, if he had gone in there and just said, listen, I'm not the guy to lecture you about marriage, but I know business, and this is a terrible way to do things. And you remember Sweet Cakes was the same thing as, bake the cake, bake it kind of thing. That would have, that self-deprecation along with standing on principle would have gone somewhere. If he would have just said, listen, I absolutely believe in the old world of only I can solve. Like, I had some game to bring to this thing, but I underestimated the level of evil in this thing, of how they would lie during COVID. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I tried to help with this vaccine, but
exactly.
But I know people would be like, yes.
Put it this way, Trump is a more aggressive defender of the poisonous jab than the CDC is at this point. They're even admitted there's adverse events. I mean, this position is not defensible.
No.
And everyone knows. It goes every round of boosters, every time they reintroduce this product, the demand for it dropped every single time, precipitously. Everybody knows this. Everybody does, okay? No, everybody knows this. Democrats aren't out there running on the jab is great. They ran from this issue the second the mandates were overthrown by the courts. Everybody knows this. The only public figure that is expending any political capital in the country right now on behalf of this poke and serum is Donald Trump. And it's his base that's amongst the most hurt by the entire process of it, both this, and don't give me, well, he didn't mandate it. That's what drug dealers say. You know what, man? I just made the fentanyl. I just made the heroin. I didn't mandate it. It's not my fault. You chose to take it.
A magical power vaccine. It got him just like it gets so many others.
We'll come back, find out what Daniel Horowitz thinks when we do. Stay tuned. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, and this portion of the show is brought to you by our friends over at Taiga Coolers. They're just like you. Wayne and the team, they listen to the show. They love the country. They're big patriots, big fans of the Blaze, and they make big-time coolers as well. Heavy-duty, built-to-last coolers come in lots of colors that can be customized even for personal or corporate gifts or events. Did I mention they're outstanding coolers? They've customized one for each one of us here. They're fantastic. And they keep the food and drinks really cool as well. Veteran-owned company made right here in the USA, employing actual Americans with a lifetime guarantee and warranty as well. All right, so here's what you want to do. Go to taigacoolers.com, Taiga. It's the first day of summer, folks. It is, if it wasn't already, it is officially cooler season. Taigacoolers.com. Design one for you, your family, or friends, clients, or just, pick one of their outstanding variety that's already made just for you anyway. Enter the promo code Steve at checkout for a 10% discount. Promo code Steve at checkout for a 10% discount at Taiga, Taiga, taigacoolers.com. All right, let's get to it. He is the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz. It is good to see you, my friend. How are you?
We're doing all right, Steve. I guess the rise of the Fourth Reich didn't make its way into the bathroom reading material at Mar-a-Lago. With all those boxes there, we could have fit a couple in.
No, it did not. Let's start with that interview with Bret Baier, the last two nights on Fox News, and what a fuster-cluck of epic proportions that entire interview was. And you can always kind of tell. There are two wings of Trumpian media personality. The first kind are people you and I either don't know or could never be friends with. All right. I mean, this is the Laura Loomer will go on, Twitter and say that was the greatest self-incrimination that's ever been done on television. No one's ever self-incriminated themselves like that. You and I are just never gonna. We don't know those people, don't want to know them, and couldn't possibly coexist with them anyway. Then there's the other group, and some of these are friends of ours, people we know, names our audience would know. You can always tell when Mr. Trump has stepped on a rake by the second group. What the second group will do is say nothing. Total silence. Like it didn't happen. Like a tree falls in the forest, man. Either they're just not saying a thing about anything, or they're talking about everything other than the rake we all just saw their boy just step on. And boy howdy, has that not been the reaction over the last 2 nights of this Bret Baier interview on Fox News, Daniel?
I told my audience today, after all the time I spent on COVID, I really don't like talking about Trump. We have so many issues we want to go over. I said, if I didn't talk about that, I'd be a hack. And now there's 2 types of people within that group you just talked about. There's those that also never talked about the rake of the vaccines to begin with. But then there are those that did and do care every other day that Trump is not talking about it. So you have the biggest issue talked about by the biggest man on the right in the wrong way, and it's not news. And in some respects, there's nothing new about this, Steve. This is just a culmination of what we've seen from conservative media the last 2 generations, where they will speak about and focus on what they could least control. And what they can most control, they won't talk about. It's the same reason they won't get on Greg Abbott's case. They won't get on Kristi Noem's case with the landowners getting their land stolen by carbon fart pipelines, for the green energy whore companies there that are bought out by the Republican Party. I mean, one after another, if they would wield their influence, they can make a difference. And I can tell you this much. If you had some random house guy say this stuff, everyone would be all over him. But this is the man that represents us, controls our image, whether we like it or not. Our thought by most of the public is reflected through the man. And when he is going that off the rails on an array of issues, to not mention that is a hack. It really is embarrassing. And especially for those who do cover it and claim to be concerned about it. And again, this is not a matter of inserting yourself into the presidential election, endorsing one candidate over another. You could just say, hey, buddy, you're off message. And I'd say an important thing that possibly they are getting wrong, that they might be engaging in some cognitive dissonance, defending in their brain. They think this issue is a bygone. It's over with. But in fact, as we're talking, ACIP, the CDC Advisory Committee, is meeting for 3 days on COVID boosters, RSV, dengue fever, flu, and monkeypox vaccines. The important thing is warp speed wasn't an anomaly, a big mistake, but an anomaly. It is continuing. It is the new normal. Joseph Mengele is the new normal. And, when Trump says something like, I wanted to just, end the bureaucracy of the FDA. Now, it sounds very good. I understand that. I think none of us begrudge him for the initial pursuit of a vaccine. But it's the fact that you believe in taking away all regulatory structure while you have full indemnification from liability, while you have government subsidizing marketing, and then government subsidizing every medical association, cultural institution to promote it. You have no free will and informed consent. So if you take away any regulatory guardrail, that's the worst form of fascism. They just approved boosters for the fall for a formulation that doesn't even exist and didn't even have a clinical trial yet after we had negative efficacy on the previous booster. And there's not a peep about it. So this is an issue that is a live fire grenade. It's not an artifact of the past that has kind of let us down. This is still going on. It's just like with the tranny issue. We are at a crossroads on that issue. We need someone who's going to lead on the issue, not support tacitly some of the premises of the other side. I'm looking at that interview, and it's not any one issue, Steve. That one was particularly egregious. You could talk about the hiring Nikki Haley to get Henry McMaster as governor. You elevate her to the second most powerful foreign policy position. You have the jailbreak stuff where he sounded like John Fetterman. I literally don't get it. And one of the points I made on today's podcast is that there's even a part of me that wants to swim with the school. Like, look, maybe he'll be different. They beat him up so much. He'll be much better in policy personnel. You watch that interview and it's like, no. I mean, it's the same thing we battled for 4 years.
I think one of the great ironies here is that much of our industry is... Here's my read of where I see our movement. Our movement believes it is inevitable Donald Trump will be the GOP nominee. Our movement believes it is inevitable that he will end up pleading guilty or being found guilty of felonies and maybe incarcerated to some degree. Our movement thinks that he has virtually no chance to win a general election. I talked privately with somebody who has been very high up in Trump world recently. They told me they told me off the record, listen, man, I'm already telling people that I know, put everything you can get into getting 51 U.S. senators. He can't be beaten for the nomination. He has no chance to win a general election. These are all things that are openly discussed privately within our movement.
Oh, yeah.
But on the other hand, the economy is not good. We have seen, and so because of that, I think there's a great worry about being seen as trying to detach people from Trump and having that hurt your bottom line as a business. And so I think these are four things that are largely thought and believed in much of conservative media and much of the conservative movement or industry. And they might all be true. The problem is they're not reconcilable either. And
what's the end game?
Yeah, because what is the end game? I mean, we all there's a fear that there's short term we can't survive without him, and long term we're not going to have him because they're just going to beat him or put him in prison anyway. And so there's this idea of being kind of trapped in this middle ground, this lukewarm hell, and there are none of those in politics. And I sense that is a lot of what is happening within our side. Do you think that's fair or not?
Steve, it is, but I will say that in many respects, it's the same thing. I left because it's the same thing that's been happening my entire career and really since Reagan, in that it's all about conservative media is ultimately about giving cover to the Republican Party. And if the Republican Party is perfidious and rotten to the core, which it is and has been for quite some time, well, that's what you're giving cover to. Trump just put a little bit of a bigger flair on it and some more unique optics and an even greater appreciation from the core part of the conservative base as opposed to kind of the Bush years, McCain and Romney. But it's the same thing. There's nothing unique about this, that where they could wield the most influence within their family, they refuse to speak up.
See, this is the thing. Right. This is the great irony is if we actually collectively said, particularly after that joke of an interview on the COVID and the vaccine topic the other night, all right, if we collectively as an industry and a movement just got together and said, all right, Mr. President, no, that cannot happen. All right. And we would potentially spur in him the very humility that might actually give him a fighting chance to repackage himself with independence that yesterday said that he has a minus 40 net favorable rating, minus 40. That's the largest voting bloc in the country. It might give him a fighting chance and thus us a fighting chance to repackage himself to those people if he showed something in his personality he's never demonstrated before, humility. That's the irony of this. We're actually enabling his eventual downfall by the constant feeding and perpetuating of this nauseating egotism that outside of about 30% of the Republican Party, the rest of America, even a lot of us who thought he was a good president and will vote for him, frankly, either somewhere between are bored by, disdain, or just find openly detestable.
Or we're out of time. We can't afford this. You know, one of the interesting things is there has never been a time when we have faced such existential threats from within. I mean, again, the trannyism, the border, the crime, the inflation, the green energy, the Joseph Mengele biomedical security state, the political targeting, the racial discrimination, just to name a few. And yet there's never been a time where the public on the issues has been with us that much, because there has been a pendulum pullback, 15-point drop in GOP support for gay marriage when that was an inexorable trend, up every year, and then even 6 points back on Dems. And certainly when you get to the tranny stuff, it's obviously much more bipartisan and pronounced. And yet there's never been such a time where we have failed to wield the power to drive into that anvil waiting for us to support, accept, and sustain our policy gains. If we don't deal with that now while we have the opportunity, you get Switzerland. They just held a referendum on COVID fascism, and 62% even now voted to sustain it. 60% voted to get to net zero by whatever year to, get rid of all of the human progress. And then like 80% voted for this OECD, cooperative minimum tax that they want to get for all European and American, North American countries. That's what they want. The people there want it. We're not quite there. We're there in certain parts of the country are like Europe, but we could still probably win a national election. And then, Steve, there are 25 states where I could point to you existential threats that are coming from the state government that have nothing to do with but the media, nothing to do with Biden, nothing to do with the Democrats. And if you only got the top 50 voices together, you could floor the gas pedal on that and win civilization battles. Yet it never happens. They'll talk about their latest take on Hunter Biden when you're not going to move the needle on that at this point, unless you're going to have a government funding fight over DOJ, which no one else is calling for. But this is nothing new. It's the same reason why we would have Senate or gubernatorial candidates come along that represent everything we claim to represent against an incumbent who is everything we say we hate, and we can never get traction for the guy because of Mark Twain's scarce patriot. They will only join a fight when it no longer costs anything to fight for it. And that's the reality. So the polling, like you mentioned, the polling, whenever you're up, forget about Trump, because Trump is nothing new. You have Greg Abbott, you have Brad Little in Idaho, you have any loser in all these states, Kay Ivey in Alabama. At the beginning, they will always be leading in the poll. The incumbent, the better known 800-pound gorilla in the room will be leading. But like you said, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you would all get involved, you are very likely to change that. They are too cowardly. What bothers me even more, Steve,
quickly,
is that you and I both know that if tomorrow the polling would be more even between the top two candidates, you would see a little bit of a change in attitude.
Oh, absolutely.
That in itself bothers me.
Absolutely. Ron DeSantis was suddenly be getting a ton more coverage in conservative media than he's not getting right now. Completely agree.
Yep.
And that speaks volumes about where we are. I agree. Thank you, Daniel. Good to see you.
Take care.
Everyone deals with pain from time to time. One of the few guarantees in life, especially as we get older. And if you're dealing with chronic pain, it's because you've got too much inflammation in the body. And that's why you want to deal with it with Relief Factor, the all-natural anti-inflammatory that is drug-free, though it was created by physicians who can prescribe drugs. Why did they create it? Because they noticed in their clinics, in their practices, a lot of what they were seeing was too much inflammation leading to chronic pain. And, taking over-the-counter, even regular drugs like Tylenol and ibuprofen, taking them in doses, though, on a daily basis, man, that can really put a strain on your liver and other organs in the body. So what if we could do this the natural way? That's what Relief Factor aims to do. And you can try it for 3 weeks right now. See if you don't see a difference in your body and the pain level in 3 weeks or less for just $20 with their 3-week quick start at relieffactor.com. Why do they offer this? Because about 70% of the time, people who try it stick with it because of the results they see in 3 weeks or less, and they want those results long term. Relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com, or call them at 800-4-RELIEF. Thoughts on the conversation we just had with Daniel before we get out of here?
Yeah, he's right. We have no time. This whole Ocean Gate thing, this dude who made the submersible that is now lost at the bottom of the ocean, and they're desperately trying to find. Well, now it turns out we find out how woke he actually was. And this is why we have no time, and it's connected to Trump in that there's just too much extraneous nonsense. We have a job to do. We have got to get back to the basics, and there's a proof of concept of some man named Ron DeSantis who knows how to do it. Whatever successes Donald Trump has, there's just too much extra nonsense, and we're going to end up at the bottom of a trench unless we correct quickly.
But it's going to be a beautiful trench. The best trench you've ever seen. It's going to be a huge trench.
You're going to get tired of all the trenches. We're going to have so many trenches, you're going to get tired of them. We're going to stick around. We've still got some buy, sell, or holds we haven't gotten to yet. We're going to do that in the overtime for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace, where you can also go to become a subscriber for just $10 a month. blazetv.com/Deace. For the rest of you, see you tomorrow. John 3:17.